complex on the screen, healthcare in between. Physics, art, and math got us down this path. Historical tales come alive, where science and stories dive. Blended facts with heart, knowledge from the start. Me bridge blues we sing to the future memory. Health and science in the mix. Me bridge got the fix. Complex subjects make
right
clear
now
every episode
in ways that we actually acquire
leads the way.
and ways that make me more efficient.
In the world of digital streams, turning knowledge into dreams. Through the tales of old, new stories unfold.
Thank you so much for joining with me. It is truly an honor and a privilege.
MedBix Webcast is a new kind of healthcare media channel to break the silo mentality and foster interdisciplinary thinking. Our mission is to fill that gap and to create a curiosity through different lenses, tapping the passion that guided the historical figures in medicine and bringing present-day groundbreaking research to the front lines. We interview physicians and leaders in the industry about present-day healthcare challenges on our live program.
Hey, welcome to the MedBix Webcast. This is Raman Annamaraju. I really have an exciting program today. It's really my passionate program, and a very important guest. The guest I love. He was the initial supporter of my podcast. I was struggling days. I was doing from the kitchen side and all those places. So I'm in Silicon Valley now. That's a big jump, actually. So the doctor, I'm going to talk about a little bit about, the Dr. Suresh Mukherji is a board certified radiologist, radiation oncologist, and also is a professor in the Robert Woodson Medical School, and is also MBA, Master of Business Administration. He went to Harvard. He's a from Harvard graduate. Think about that. He has impeccable credentials, as a doctor, as a physician. So he's going to talk about something different today. I never had, I've been in this healthcare for a long time, but one word he was talking about yesterday is truly a professor in that sense, is a moral hazard of the healthcare system, or pharmaceutical industry, drug pricing, or healthcare industry in overall. We had a big tragedy. The United Healthcare CEO was shot in the daylight, in the present daylight, and people reactions are very surprising. It's not sympathy. People are really acting very different. What causes that kind of a action? What is that reaction? Why they're so unhappy about it? So I think one of them, at least, the moral hazard. So let me bring Dr. Mukherji. He is a very distinguished professor, and doctor, let me bring him to the main stage. Dr. Mukherji, welcome to the MedBix Webcast. You're part of the initial scene, and my ad. You're part of the ad. So welcome to the MedBix.
Hey, Ramana, thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be here. And I was looking at the introduction right now and how easy it was to do all the logistics. I remember when you did this about 2 or 3 years ago. It's been amazing. The innovations and how this has progressed over the 3-year period. And now that you're in Silicon Valley, kudos to you. I always admired you when you started because, part of success, a large part of success is not necessarily how smart you are, but the passion and the energy and the enthusiasm that you have for what you're doing. So, you clearly have the talent and the knowledge, but you have something that is really rare, and that's a combination of the talent, the knowledge, the grit. And I can tell, part of being successful in life is to do something that really satisfies your soul. And I can really tell that this is really something you're really passionate about, and that you get so much pleasure. And for me, it's just again a privilege to be part of it. So thank you for having me again.
Thank you, sir. Coming from you is a very true honor. I want to ask you, that the topic is you're also a kind of advisor to Santiniketan, and I will talk about that a little bit later on. But you're an MBA graduate. You saw the healthcare administrative side of the healthcare. you are exposed to the healthcare administrative side, which I am always involved to some extent. You introduced me a new word called a moral hazard in the healthcare industry. Tell us a little bit about that. What is a moral hazard in healthcare industry? Why is there any connection between the people who are insensitive to the killing of the United Healthcare CEO? What do you think of that whole thing? What is your opinion on that?
Well, I think first of all, taking somebody else's life like that is absolutely abhorrent.
Yeah.
I was incredibly saddened by the murder of this individual. Everyone has their very difficult jobs, and to express oneself in such an abhorrent, disgusting manner by shooting someone in cold blood is just reprehensible. And my thoughts and prayers go out to the family of the CEO of United Healthcare. There's no, at least in my opinion, there's no reason to justify anything like this. So I want to make sure that people understand this. When it comes to what moral hazard is, there are various definitions of a moral hazard, but I'll just start by giving a little bit of background of myself. As you kindly mentioned, I am a professor of radiology, radiation oncology, and I also hold an appointment in ENT surgery. And I've been an academic radiologist my whole life, but I've also worked in corporate healthcare and also in private practice as well too. But I also have worked on the healthcare policy side. So I guess the only unique perspective that I can give is when I talk about healthcare, I talk about the 6 Ps of healthcare. And those 6 Ps are, number one, a provider, which is what we are. The hospitals and physicians are providers. Then you have the patient. Then you have 2 entities that really, for me, are the crux of some of the challenges that we have in healthcare, and those are the healthcare purchasers and the healthcare payers. Now, what is a healthcare purchaser? Well, a healthcare purchaser is that if you have a company and you have employees, you've heard that your employees have to have benefits. Well, in order to have these benefits, someone has to purchase the healthcare for your employees, and that's what a healthcare purchaser is. So if you have a small to mid to large size company, you're actually purchasing healthcare services for your employees. And then once you purchase something, you have to pay for these healthcare. So me as a physician, if I provide a service, someone has to pay me. And that payer is typically an insurance company, or the largest payer in the United States is CMS, which is the Centers of Medicare and Medicare Services. So that's what I mean by the purchasers and the payers. You have to purchase healthcare for your employees. And if you purchase them, eventually you have to pay the providers that actually provide the services for your employees. And then the last 2 Ps, when I talk about my 6 Ps, are the policy and the politics. And I think we're all aware of healthcare policy. We're all aware of these large institutes that are involved in creating policy. But you also can't get anywhere unless you can navigate the politics. So that's what I mean by the 6 Ps. And I think, especially now with the change of administration, we're going to hear the famous political term Obamacare. That was a change in our healthcare system, but it was a policy change. So those are the 6 Ps. That's the providers, the patients, purchasers, payers, and then the policy and the politics. And the 7th P is actually pharma. And I personally have been involved in all of those 6 Ps, and now I'm getting involved in that 7th P as well, and that's the pharmacy industry. So when we talk about moral hazard in healthcare, especially in the US system, there are various definitions for a moral hazard. And what a moral hazard as it relates to healthcare, at least in my opinion, and I have to say the opinions that I'm expressing today are only my opinion. They don't represent any of the entities that I'm affiliated with. But the moral hazard is that it basically is the costs of a bad outcome end up falling on someone other than the person taking the risk. So for instance, if you are creating a policy or if you are creating a new drug and you attach a certain cost to this, you are making your own decisions at times in a vacuum. Are you doing what's best for the corporation? but you're not taking into account unintended consequences of the decisions that you make. So just to frame the conversation moving forward, I wanted to give you a little bit something about my background. At least my definition of a moral hazard is where you're sort of acting in the best interests of your organization in order to ensure, if you will, the survival and the successful. But at times you're not taking into consideration the best interests of the population that you serve.
That means the patient you're talking about, population means patient, right? Patient.
Right.
So the moral hazard, if I understand any different way, correct me, is an indifference to the cost. That's basically, at the end of the day, is indifference to the pharmaceutical company doesn't care well what the cost of the structure is, because they're not somebody else paying, somebody else, so they don't care about the cost that they're charging you. So that indifference is the moral hazard. Is that right, the definition, or what do you think of that definition itself?
Well, I think it's close to it. I think, obviously the pharmaceutical industry is an incredibly important industry in our society. Without the pharmaceutical industry, we wouldn't be able to live. I was born just a few years after penicillin was actually popularized. So, it was created in 1927, but it really only became disseminated around 1945 after World War II. And I wasn't born much longer after that. So the point that I want to make is the pharmaceutical industry plays an incredibly important role in our society. And I think with the COVID vaccine, I think that really helped us get through various challenges. And so they play an incredibly important role. But I think, to sort of frame the conversation that we discussed recently was, at times, the pharmaceutical industry, when they create new medications, the cost to the citizens of the United States exceed the cost to citizens that live outside of the United States. And so what I mean by a moral hazard, and we've seen this over and over again, but most recently the benchmark are the GLP-1 inhibitors, the semaglutide components. So when we specifically talk about revolutionary changes, I mean true disruptive changes that affect society as a whole, we're not talking about things like certain types of immunotherapy that only affect cancer patients. We're not really talking about gene therapy that really only affects a small portion of the population. But when we look at a population as a whole, at least in my lifetime, there have been 2 or 3 times that there have been medications that have completely changed society. And just to give an example, these are the high blood pressure medications. So for instance, when I went to medical school, they first started creating the first antihypertensives. And then following that, another disruptive medication that at first time met with a lot of resistance were the anti-cholesterol drugs. So at times, a lot of people had hypercholesterolemia, and then they created, the various drugs that treated hypercholesterol. Those are 2 examples of medications that were initially under patent protection, that were highly scrutinized, but now are part of our fabric as a society because they do show benefits. And right now, the GLP-1 inhibitors, which were initially created for treating diabetes, but now have been transitioned into weight loss, really are index medications right now, where the pharmaceutical companies.
Is it Ozempic is one of them?
Yeah. So Ozempic was initially created to treat diabetes, but that same compound is now Wegovy for this specific pharmaceutical company is now used to treat weight loss. So you're right. It's a GLP-1 inhibitors. It's Ozempic, but now we're talking about Wegovy, which is that medication. So the moral hazard comes in is that when a pharmaceutical company spends billions and billions of dollars in research and development, those are large greenfield investments that, and some of the medications work, some of them don't. And there is a obligation to these pharmaceutical companies to protect their patents. But what has evolved over time is that the patent protection in the United States has resulted in preventing access for those individuals in the United States that most need those medications. So for instance, right now with Ozempic and specifically Wegovy in the United States, a lot of these trials were done in the United States. There were a lot of resources that were used from the United States in order to allow Novo Nordisk, which is actually a Danish company, to introduce this drug and get FDA approval and get the patent protection so it can be used in the United States. But the challenge is that Wegovy right now in the United States costs about $1,400 per month. Now in Denmark, because Novo Nordisk is actually a Danish company, historically Ozempic, which has been used to treat diabetes, has been free for the Danish population.
Unbelievable.
And Wegovy right now, I just read something where they recently reduced the price, thanks in large part to Bernie Sanders, to $140 per month. So this medication, which is a global medication that's created by a Danish company where a lot of the R&D was done in the United States, is $1,400 compared to maybe $130 for the weight loss component. But for the diabetic component in Denmark, it has been free. They may have put a small copay, but again, in the United States, it's over $1,000. So that's what we mean by the moral hazards, where once a company, a global company, comes to the United States, uses our resources, performs the tests on the US population, it gets patent protected. And because it's essentially, as you put in the description, I don't want to necessarily use the term monopolistic, but that compound is protected, they have the right to price set. So what's interesting is that the way the world works and the business model works is that this company will say, we're going to charge whatever price essentially we want to in the United States. And that's going to be the price setter. Then when they go to other companies, they can say, well, we'll discount this rate to you because this is what we're charging as a price. So that is part of the moral hazard that we face in the United States. And then if you take it one step further, people talk about the poor healthcare in the United States or some of the poor outcomes, why our life longevity is not as great as it is compared to other countries. If you think about the time that these GLP-1 inhibitors are going to be under patent protection and the high cost, that is actually going to prevent those individuals that are most in need for these medications in order to receive those medications. So when I travel around the world and we get in discussions about the healthcare system, I always say the US healthcare system has the best healthcare system in the world if you can afford it. And as a result, when you have these medications that are under patent protection and they're at such a high price, if you have the resources, you can find a way to have access to it. But when we talk about diversity and healthcare disparities, the way our system is set up is that those individuals that are most at risk, that actually have diabetes type 2, that are overweight, that are obese, oftentimes these are the individuals with the lowest income. And the way the price in our system is set up is these are the individuals that are most at need, they're most at risk, and unfortunately have the most to benefit, but they don't have access to these medications. And this is just the way the system works.
It's a very sad system works. The system is very tragic. In fact, what you're saying to us. Is it just talking about politics? What is the regulations, the government responsibility in this one for the public? Are they talking about some kind of a policy regulations on this, on the patented production? They usually take out after 20 years or the long term. They give out quite. I have to kind of indifference, disagree with you in some extent about the money they put in the research side. One thing that you're saying, they put a massive amounts. In fact, in NIH and the government puts quite a bit of money, right? Universities and all those things. They did a real lifting from the universities and NIH and the other governmental organizations. They get the pharmaceutical people get the benefits, initial research, in my view. They take the benefits and they take the rewards also. But you're saying that they are putting these restraints on the protections on the patents. It's unfair to the American public, is not?
Yeah. So just when I talk about the 7 Ps, I do want to start with the perspective of the pharmaceutical. So Ramana, you're in Silicon Valley, so you're in the heart of innovation, startup companies, venture capitalists, et cetera. For me, a pharmaceutical company is like a venture capital firm, in the sense that there are a lot of medications that they try to develop. Just like in venture capital, there are a lot of startups that you put your money in. And the way the system works is that you'll spend $100 million, you'll lose 200 million, you'll make 300 million, you'll put another investment, you'll lose $500 million. And then you invest in Google or NVIDIA and you make 40 billion. That's just the way it works. So what they're looking for, what the venture capitalist firms are oftentimes looking for, is that one Google, that NVIDIA, the Microsoft, et cetera, to float everything. And in a way, I think it's somewhat analogous to the pharmaceutical industry, because there's so many stops and starts. With myself being involved in clinical trials from a physician standpoint, I know how difficult it is to do clinical trials, to get through regulations at different universities, to get through the FDA, et cetera. It's a lot of investment. And I applaud the vision of many of these pharmaceuticals. But a lot of the patent protection, I think, was developed years ago. And I applaud that. I think just like we're worried about patent protections with other countries taking our patents, and I don't want to say necessarily stealing, but copying our patents, that's not appropriate. But by the same token, in the United States, this is where the moral hazard comes in. If we actually have some type of medication that a company has spent billions of dollars to try to develop, and maybe it happens to be that one big medication that's going to support the company over a certain amount of time, there is an important question that needs to be asked, is that if you do find something that's going to help the population, at some point, patent protection should not be equated now to prevent patient access to these medications. And the good thing about it is, at least now, compared to what has been done in the past, there is a move within CMS to actually pay for the GLP-1 inhibitors in the Medicare population. So whatever CMS does, oftentimes the private insurance will follow. But part of that really is based on price transparency and negotiation of prices. And now CMS is actually, for the first time that I can ever recall, has been able to get through the big lobbying barriers, because the pharmaceuticals want to keep that price as high as they can, but they've been able to actually now negotiate with the pharmaceuticals and try to negotiate a lower price for the population that is for Medicare Part D. So I think there is a little bit of movement in this, which I think is heading in the right direction.
Dr. Mukherjee, I lived in Canada. I used to live in Montreal, Canada. The medications are almost like free in that sense. So a lot of border states, when I used to live in New York, we used to go there. When I used to go to Montreal and pick up the medications and bring out the can. Though it is not legal, I don't know the whole process about it. But a lot of people do that, and they go to Canada and get it. And now the people are going to India, for example. Blood pressure medication is a lot cheaper. The whole, if you get one pill, it can cover the entire month. So why the American citizens has to suffer this, to take this brunt of this unadded disadvantage than other countries' citizens? They have the blessing of those kind of things.
Yeah. Well, you make a really important point that really hits home to me, and I'm glad you mentioned this, because I haven't thought about it in a while. But back in 1995, my mother had a kidney transplant. So this is back in 1995, and transplant were just becoming mainstream. And that once you have a kidney transplant, you have somebody else's organ in you, the body reacts by trying to attack that organ in you because it's foreign to the body. And the way that you prevent that is by giving what we refer to as immunosuppressants, or some type of immunodepressant, to try to prevent your body from rejecting the transplant. Well, back in 1995, 1995 now, those medications were about $1,500 to, actually they were $3,000 at that time. I mean, that's a lot of money now, but you can imagine what is then before. So my mother had the decision as to whether or not to try to take the medication or just die, basically. And so what she ended up doing was that there was, at that time, there was a pathway that was called the gray market, where you could get the same medications through Canada at half the price. Now, that was illegal at the time, but I kind of joke, the only way my mother survived at that time is that I had a 75-year-old mother who had a kidney transplant who would technically be a felon in the United States, because she was getting her medication through Canada because otherwise she couldn't afford it. And then she would have basically died from her body rejecting it. So this has been around for, unfortunately, quite some time.
So that is the frustration a lot of people have. That's what they are expressing the wrong way. The public in general, that I can go to Canada and get these companies come from other countries and they're charging and they want to make all the money. It's a understandable venture capital, but there's a public health is involved. This is if you don't take, as you said that just now, we mentioned people who needs badly these is a Ozempic and the weight loss medications. They don't get it. They eventually, the healthcare system is paying at the end, the kidney failure and all those things. So we are end up paying different ways. Why not in the beginning itself just subsidize or something like that work it out, some process there with these companies and stuff. They want to make a quick buck immediately. That is the problem we have, right? That is the government invests a lot of money. They didn't expect any returns there. So, but they should, when they take the research of the government, these public the institutions, the private companies like Danish company should pay back for that initial research American government did through the reducing the cost to the public, because public financed it.
Right. Yeah, that's part of that moral hazard is like that same Ozempic and Wegovy are made by Novo Nordisk, which is a Danish company. So that's why I specifically single them out, in the sense that Ozempic has always been paid for if you're a Danish citizen living in Denmark, but we have to pay $1,300 to $1,400 here. I'm curious to see what Lilly is going to do. Lilly has now come off with Mounjaro and Zepbound. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do. And I want to try to make two comments and see if I can explain it, because it is a bit of a complicated topic. But the pharmaceutical industry does give a certain price for these drugs, which sometimes is different from the price that we are charged as consumers. So there is a disconnect, and the people that end up determining the final price are in part the pharmaceuticals, in part the insurance companies. And there is this entity that's called the pharmacy benefits managers. It's called a PBM. And the PBM are sort of like the classic middlemen or the middle people. And the PBMs are very an entity which it's sort of hard to get your hands around. The best way that I can describe it is this. So Ramana, let's just say MedBricks expands, which I hope it does, and now all of a sudden you have 1,000 people working for you. Okay. Now, in order to get the best people, you're going to have to provide healthcare benefits for them. Now, when GM went broke, when I was in Detroit in 2008, they were actually spending more money on healthcare than they were. I remember. So from you, if you want to expand to 1,000 people, one of the biggest costs that you have is you're not purchasing a Dell computer and then plugging in the software. It's not the steel.
It's not the steel that cost is. The cost is healthcare is the number one.
Exactly. So what I'm going with this is that with the pharmacy benefits manager, what they would come to you, Raman, and you would say, well, I've got, my biggest cost is healthcare. I need someone to help me manage healthcare for 1,000 people that have 1,000 different disorders, that have 1,000 different drugs that they take. And oftentimes you turn to these consultants and these benefits managers, and somehow going from the cost that is offered by a pharmaceutical to actually what's paid for by the consumer gets lost in these different layers. Now, it's completely different for Medicare, because for Medicare, if you're on Medicare and you have a service performed, the doctor's going to get paid a certain amount. So that's why I'm glad that Medicare now is starting to negotiate these prices.
It reminds me of a story from India, Dr. Mukherji. There's two cats. they found a bread, and they go to a monkey and say, can you divide the bread for both of us? So what the monkey did was they're playing with the balance back and forth and eating the eating in between. At the end of the day, all the bread is gone. So that is the story
That's true.
that is
That's
a lot of people
exactly.
tell me about the healthcare system that we
Yeah.
have.
But
You know,
I'll give you a couple more examples about, some of the unintended consequences and some of the options. Now, I don't know this about, again, we're specifically, to me, this index drug really, and I think that's why I was delighted that you wanted to focus on this, because like I said, this is a disruptor medication. This is just like the antihypertensives and the anti-cholesterol drugs. The pharmacies, I know Lilly has something that's called a Lilly Direct, where if you have the resources and the knowledge, you can actually purchase a drug directly from Lilly. So that cost is less. And I think it's about $500. I don't know if it's for Ozempic or whether it's for Wegovy. So the pharmaceutical companies are now, at least Lilly is trying to go direct from business to consumer. And I know Pfizer has a GLP-1 drug that's in the pipeline as well too. The other thing that happens too is that what I am seeing is that, again, for those individuals that are most at risk but that don't have the resources are actually going to compound pharmacies. So I don't know if you're familiar with compound pharmacies, but what compound pharmacies are is that they are standalone pharmacies that are not part of CVS, they're not part of Walgreens, but they're independent pharmacies. Now, these pharmacies in itself are not necessarily FDA approved, but they get their medications from FDA approved suppliers. So they can actually create a mimic of the semaglutide, which can then that'd be much a cheaper option. Now, I don't advocate that at all, but I know numerous people are doing that because they just don't have the resources. When you
there's a
think
lot
of
of
the average
pharmaceutical
population,
company. Yeah.
yeah, the average population of four, two parents and two kids in the United States in 2024, the average income was $74,000 before taxes. So once you take away taxes, once you have a mortgage, once you have your house, you have to make really, really hard decisions. So if you wonder why people do what they do, is that sometimes you just don't have options. And so I wanted to make sure that people could understand that type of perspective. And there's some type of behaviors people don't understand. There's tough choices that the average citizen has to make in the United States.
That's the sad part. Let us talk about a little bit more sadder part is the cancer. You're a radiation oncologist. People are getting older in the United States, and cancer is a death sentence in the financial sense, is a huge death sentence for the families. What do you suggest in that for those people really go through this horrible sense, that the dreadful about the financial aspect of the cancer rather than a disease itself?
Well, just to, I'm a neuroradiologist, but I have a joint appointment in radiation oncology, and my life has sort of been focused on head neck oncology. It's a really difficult question
Yes.
to answer because there's nothing more. My dad died of pancreatic cancer, so I know what it's like to, be affected by it. The challenge that you run into, and this is just in my opinion alone, working with, today was our tumor clinic, so we saw numerous patients with head and neck cancer come in. The best chance to cure cancer is the first time you see that patient. And if you see that patient and you can cure the cancer that first time, that's great. But unfortunately, overall, regardless of the type of cancer that you have in most instances, the chance of survival once that cancer comes back is only about 20%. And unfortunately, especially when we're dealing with the highly malignant cancers, there are numerous medications and treatments that patients are put on. But unfortunately, the efficacy is not very good.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what you end up doing is that you end up basing your decisions and your treatments based on hope as opposed to actual outcome. So when it really comes to treating patients with cancer, it's really hard in the United States not to treat someone, because more importantly than making that patient live, if you say you're not going to treat someone, you're taking away any hope that they have or their family has. And that's one of the big challenges that we have in the United States. So that's where a lot of these new trials, these medications,
Yeah.
um, are very expensive, and eventually the efficacy is not as great as we would hope it to be.
Dr. Mukherjee, I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I'm going to bring you on the side. Actually, that why that cancer is some mysterious way. It is. You said that efficacy is not there, and it is a really, that's not a great outcomes. So that is it physics is something involved there that I'm going to talk about some math, some fundamental sciences there. What is that is does that? So I'm going to bring you on the side, and that is Dr. Suresh Mukherjee. He's a good friend of mine and a great professor and a great ideas he gives us for all of us. In fact, let me bring all of us in the side, and then you can Nazim, you can also come down there. Let me bring all of you on the side a little bit. Just okay. That is okay. 1 second. I don't know why it is. Just sometimes it's act up. Okay. I don't know why it is. Okay. Anyway, I will go through this little bit of a. Okay, then this is Dr. Mukherjee. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of an interesting subject. Is the AI. I'm in the Silicon Valley. Everybody talks about AI. AI morning breakfast, lunch, dinner here. In the Silicon Valley. So you whether they know it or not, they use the word very loosely here. But this is my December month. I'm getting a great guest. So I tell you something interesting about what is a life, what is intelligence, is the one is been addressing by a long time. Nazim, you can come down and you can watch with us. Um, so it is actually Aristotle. He was talking about the what is a life about, and the Avicenna, from Iran, Persia. He was talking about Avicenna was the Persian physician. Actually, he's a doctor, and then he was talking about first time a principle of equivalence. When you fall, a body falls freely, then there is a soul there. That's what he came up with the idea of soul because of self-awareness with when the weightless motion coming in the picture. Then Chris Langan is still alive. Langton, he was a computer scientist. He talked about very complexity. He spent a lot of time on the what is life and what is intelligence. Stuart Kaufman, Dr. Kaufman, is a University of San Francisco from here actually, but he's a physicist. He became an engineering professor. He is a polymath of nobody knows his name, but he spent all his lifetime on this strange subject of complexity and what is intelligence and what is life. The other doctor, the anesthesiologist, Dr. Stout Ameroff, and then Roger Penrose, one of the celebrated physicists. So they won the Nobel Prize. Actually, Dr. Roger Penrose won the Nobel Prize. And then these are the people. So they did spend on the Santa Fe Institute. That is, they spend a lot of time on these new things, a mysterious phenomena in physics. But people, it is nobody wants to deal with it. They put under the carpet. But AI is pushing this one to the central stage now. That's mysterious phenomena. What is that mysterious phenomena? I'm going to talk about that. It is a that is a this is a very interesting concept. So guess there is there is a British mathematician did some experiment. If you are in Texas, nothing else to do. If the game is guess the weight of the ox. Okay, that is. So there is a 5 people guessed the weight of the ox, and they're all wrong. But the guy who took all the numbers and he averaged them, and it became perfect number. That is the exact weight of the ox. So a collective intelligence, collective people brought together a kind of a right answer. That is a very strange phenomena. Then you can see in the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Lifeline game is you saw the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. People are familiar in the United States. There are 3 choices for the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Take 2 choices away. That's one. The second one is call your expert, your buddy expert. And the third was ask audience. What they found out is very interesting. answer, the interesting thing. Most of the individuals, if you ask them, they don't know the difference between they don't even know the president of the United States. Probably some of them are, but the 91% of the time, the efficacy, the ask audience is correct, came out to be correct. What is that phenomena? That's something mysterious going on there. Not only that, you see that in the court system, American jury decisions, for example, these are not any experts in the legal experts. They're cognitive biases. They come with the cognitive bias. They're not that smart as people understanding the scientific evidence. But when they made the studies, actually Calvin and Giesel study in 1966 and the 2000 study, National Center for State Courts, came out that remarkably the common decision by jury decision came to be very close to the judges' decisions. Very strange. The mass is giving a small, not so intelligent people, not so smart people come back with a very intellectual answers, a very correct solutions for the problems. That is some phenomena physics cannot explain. No way to explain this. It's a physics struggled with it. The chemistry struggled with it. Life itself is struggled with it. What is this phenomena? Wisdom of the crowd. The truth emerges. Bunch of simple people come up with the complex answers. Is a very strange phenomenon in physics. It's not only in this you see in the crowd, but you see in different things. This is called emergence. This is a part of the mysterious phenomena. Emergence is called emergence in physics. Embedded secret of the universe. This is a simple rules create a complex behavior. It's a complex system. That's what they call. So if you see that. If you see ants' behavior, ants are stupid ants. They don't have a new blueprint and no central authority, but they build a beautiful colonies, very complex colonies. They build it. Optimal the food, for example, optimal route for the food. They came back with ingenious methods. How do the stupid ants? They only go in a way that is how they create this kind of a complex system. That is really unknown. That is called emergence. That is a biology creates this kind of a emergence. Is a lot of people, the philosophers, the quantum physicists, all of them are struggling with it right now. Why? The ants algorithm, for example, the way ants do that is they go swarm the entire food source and all the different directions, the random way, and then they leave the pheromone trail. The trail that so you see very simple thing. What they do is the shortest route creates a lot more pheromone trail because they can go faster, quicker to the colony and come back to the food source faster because they know the shortest route. So they leave the more chemicals there. So it's a thicker chemical there. The other ants follow, and it becomes by the third time they follow the simple line. It's simple rule. There is a phenomena that the complex behavior comes out of that whole process. That is an amazing. So we don't even know why. Still, that is a flock of birds. For example, the flock of birds biology is a simple separation alignment. They do the dancing. If you put stupid humans, we all eat each other. We are all going to go in mass bump into each other. But they do dance that are complex dances they do through that process. Amazing. That's a complex behavior, scientific understand. That's not understood. We don't know the rules. We don't know what happened in the middle. We know the simple rule started it. What the rule is? Simple separation and alignment. That's all. They go one. They know average side of the direction and the separation. That's all they know. But they create a complex behavior, a beautiful behavior. It creates flock of birds. Exhibit a very complex phenomena. This is called brain. If you wanted to go to the next level, brain is a conscious emergence. And simple neurons, they don't know anything else. Simply a chemical signal back and forth and moving the chemical signal and the electrical signal, they move. But they create love, fear, thoughts, all of them they create. How do they create that? Do we know the phenomena? Do you know the rules? We don't know. That is called emergence. Emergence is very complex phenomena, complexity system. Santa Fe Institute, actually, the whole institute is meant to study this complex behavior. So in the complex behavior, if you see, that's called, in the artificial intelligence, is called black box. The black box is a system whose internal workings are unknown or irrelevant, but whose input and output are observable. That is what is a black box. Black box there, just everybody is talking about black box in the artificial intelligence. You need to know what is that black box is. I tell you why that is a very dangerous one, good and bad. I tell you good and bad of that process. So Stuart Kaufman is a doctor, is an MD, is an engineer, is a physicist, is a PhD in physics. This man is a polymath. What he said that was, this is an interesting phenomenon. He was talking about, he was not well known even among physicists, because he was spending on this complex system in Santa Fe Institute. What he said is, edge of chaos. The life is created at the edge of between the order and disorder. Very strange phenomenon. I will explain to you where the life is where the life exists. If you take a hard coffee, and you put the foam inside, when it is mixing, that's a low entropy. There's two separations. The low entropy means you can identify the foam, you can identify the coffee. Slowly the foam sips into the process of the black coffee, and it becomes create a pattern inside. Then after a while, it becomes a coffee is completely disordered. High entropy and low entropy. But in between, the complexity comes. That is a life. That wave that is coming in the coffee, that is interactions. That is a high entropy and low entropy. That is the life itself. That's where the life is born. It's a geothermal reactions in the underground. That's become a biothermal reactions. That is transforming. So is a Dr. Stuart Kaufman gave one of the best examples. What he said was, this is the property of the universe itself. Is embedded property of the emergence, is embedded property of the universe. That's what he said. So what is the innate? What about silicon computers? What they know? They exhibit emergence. That is, I tell you, that is a surprise to even the computer scientists. It showed a behavior, a very human-like behavior, surprisingly exhibiting the human-like behavior. They didn't even expect. ChatGPT-3, all the expert systems, all these times, after a while you bombard with the data, it all of a sudden a phase shift happens. Immediately it becomes an intellectual, self-aware in that sense. That is proven. The emergent behavior, it exhibited the emergent behavior. The artificial AI's large language model, ChatGPT and other models, they exhibited the emergence of process. That means they think like a human, they talk like a human, or they have that self-awareness in that sense. Surprisingly, emergent behavior they exhibited. So there is a kind of intelligence. It's showing like us. It happened just all of a sudden. One fine morning, ChatGPT-3 became ChatGPT-4, and it became, that's what the Google CEO was talking about. Every scientist know this happened in overnight. It's not a slow process. This emergence is a shift, a phase shift, like a water to become a steam. That what happened. That is the AI showing that emergence properties. So the unknown. So emergence is unknown. We don't know the rules. So LLMs, large language models, showing the emergence, that's a black box. But there is one limitations to it. That is called, Stephen Wolfram is a mathematician. He is the one guy who is talking about complexity. He's talked about irreducible computational complexity. What that means is, unless you compute, you cannot predict until you compute. There is a limitation to it. You cannot guess what is going to be the outcome. So the outcome is unknown until you compute. So the Stephen Wolfram he wrote the cellular automata and all those things he did. He's very well known among for mathematicians. Irreducible computational complexity is we do not know what the results are. It could be good or it could be bad. That is a problem with the AI. So let us talk about the good. So that's a black box. Biological evolution, for example, if you take, Dr. Robert Perlis talks about it, malaria and all those things. It takes a long time, thousands of years. If there is a biological evolution, if something goes wrong, a typhus or if you get a malaria, we also create a defense system. It may take slowly. That's a sickle cell anemia that is a cause of that. That the blacks moved, they created a defense system in the Africa. When they came here, that became a sickle cell anemia. So that is a very strange biological evolution. It takes time, but it is slow. So humans have time to prepare themselves to address the biological errors. But LLM, they go to the speed of light, and to produce the virus, it can wipe out the entire humankind. So that is the danger of because we don't know the rules. The black box is truly unknown. We do not know inherent rules inside. That is the complexity of the behavior. That is the unknown. But things, it does a lot of what you can do. If you can do it, AI does better and faster. Those are things you need to address. AI agents, they call. Agents are like servants for us. So they go and do the things that you like. That is very good. Analyzing medical images, Dr. Suresh Mukherji does that. Dr. Mukherji reads medical images. You can analyze, he was talking the last time about 30% improvement. You can do that through analyzing the medical images. Assist with the diagnosis, the cancer and all those things. The first time you can cure. We don't know it's still cancer. Maybe it will find out. But you got to be very careful about that. Manage patient records, scheduling appointment, file claims. A lot of times these work the doctors complain. You can reduce this immediately. That is where the AI can do wonders. The already known processes it can do well. Then one of the best thing out of that outcome is access the iron triangle. You can solve the iron triangle problem, access and cost and quality. So that you can reduce all of them same time. The access can be increased, cost can be reduced, quality can be improved. This iron triangle can be broken. So that is where you use it. What is that? Flocks, I said, the flock of birds. They understood the nature. They understood the laws of the universe. We stupid humans don't understand, and that we think we know better than them, and that's where we get into trouble. So flock of birds exhibiting the emergence phenomena, they understood, they tuned with the universe, and then they're exhibiting the beautiful phenomena of the flocking. So that's why I say flock of birds say no to so we need doctors. Still we need a doctor step by step. That evolutionary process, if you replace AI, you don't know what that outcome is a reducible computational complexity. Gödel theorem is also the mathematical restriction on that one. So there is a Harding theorem from Alan Turing. All of them come in the picture. Computational restrictions on that, on the AI. So you have to be very careful. What do you do? So in my view, we are all, So how do you solve this problem in the? So I created a platform. Actually, that's I hope I have 1,000 people working for me, but I'm not there yet. So the 3 steps, I can tell you simple healthcare system, they make it so complex, but I can tell you simple steps. You have to start with the philosophy of care. What is philosophy of care? Plato said that reduce the pain, reduce the burden, make them feel comfortable. And this is a philosophy. Nobody should suffer. Nobody should die on the streets. These are the philosophy of care. Then you create a methodology. That means, how do you address this? Is algorithms. That's a mathematical algorithms. Set theories. You could put a complex methodology. You can put it, but no methodology should conflict with the philosophy of care. Then you take the methodology, and then you can create a platform. So technology should not create a conflict with the methodology. Methodology should not conflict with the philosophy. If there is no conflicts there, There is no problem at all. Three steps. You don't need a complexity. The complexity, we can at least reduce it. Emergence can be handled, can be managed at least, because that process, philosophy of care, is in my view, it's a three-step process. The so the you have to go to the sages. Doctor, one of the sages, he is working with a university, Santiniketan in India. He is a sage. Rabindranath Tagore is a Nobel Laureate. He was a fan of science. He met Albert Einstein. He met the Werner Heisenberg, the quantum physicist, father of the quantum physics. So these are the people that really understood all the game. It's a poet met the scientists met the poet. They learned from each other. It's not that far. So Albert Einstein always he encouraged the art. So he said, Baruch Spinoza he followed. So philosophy, you have this so important in this one to understand the systems. Is a you Unfortunately, what AI doing, this all these people are doing in the technology side, they start with the technology and they want to solve the problem. That is a problem where the conflict is coming up right now. So you should not start with the technology first. That is the policies, that is 6 P's or 7 P's. Dr. Mukherjee is talking about that. You need to start with that for philosophy and the policies. Then you go to methodology, can create algorithms, a functional algorithm that cannot be conflicted. So this is what we do, and if we do this, that is we can solve the problem. Some extent, healthcare. The emergencies are still a mystery. That is where our minds are really appreciate the universe itself. That mystery behind physics cannot solve it. The emergency itself creates maybe that is where the spirituality come. In the Hindu Bhagavad Gita, Atma Paramatma, and then philosophy of in the Plato, he talks about theory of forms. All of them are addresses something beyond our imagination. So we need to be humility has to be there. We are not the god. We are not the gods. We are just we implement the things that we can understand. So we need to follow the birds. And thank you for watching. And let me bring Doctor. Um, so what do you think, Doctor Mukherjee?
No, it was always great. I always enjoy it. The first time we did this, you challenged me with the concept of entropy,
Yeah.
and then the last time, I think it was the last time or the time before that. I had just received the honor of joining the international board of the Santiniketan Medical Center, and I think you talked about the Higgs boson particle, and
Yes.
it turns out Bosch was Bengali.
Yeah.
And then I went back and I read about Higgs boson, and the Higgs boson particle was actually named after Bose. And then 3 months ago, I was actually in Sweden, in Stockholm, and I went to the Nobel Prize Museum, which was for me quite amazing. And I actually saw the Higgs's Nobel Prize where he mentioned Subhashan Bose. So, and now you've taught me about emergence. The term that I always used was crowdsourcing. But you've introduced the term emergence for me, which I think I appreciate. It's a very important topical issue because, if you do look at, even in the last election, there was a growing tidal wave of citizen journalism,
Yeah.
where legacy media were saying, well, you get your information from us because we're on television and we're the learned ones. But in actuality, I think we can all agree that a lot of the information that we're getting right now does have opinion. So I think that even makes crowdsourcing more important as to where we get our information from. So, I appreciate you encapsulating it so nicely into our current day situation. And I'm going to grab onto that terminology of emergence as I move forward. So thank you.
What do you think, Nazim? I bought the Iranian Persian for Dr. Evin Sena there. Yeah.
It was an honor to listen to both of you. Especially, I enjoyed the first part with Dr. Mukherjee, the combination, especially the the example of pharmaceutical and with the venture capitalists so resonated. I loved it. And with AI, I think we all gonna go through a shift in 2025 in every industry. Me myself as an orthodontist, I'm thinking, what should I do and how can I be ahead of the curve of this AI thing, and the analogy and the black box that you mentioned. It's really, we need to think about it, and really in each industry we need to navigate it truly and correctly.
Yeah, I agree with you. So, that's a lot of wisdom from both of you. Thank you, Dr. Mukherjee. And always you shed a great light on the process itself. I'm truly honored to have you. I was honored and privileged to have you. Your wisdom is always well taken, and actually that you with the adding this new Santiniketan kind of mind you're adding now, so that will be adding our discussion more. So we need a philosophy, and we need the actual solutions for the problems and the money, the venture capitalists. We all need all of them. So you gave a very acceptable lane to all of us. Thank you so much for joining with us. Good night, all of you guys. Good night. Thank you all joining with me today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you, Naziman. You're always welcome here. More fun to watch. Thank you all, guys. Just let me get my final thing. That is, I don't know where it is that I'm looking for it, but yeah, right here. Thank you all. Good night.
We are retelling their stories through our patented designs that can be worn on scrubs, t-shirts, printed on conference bags, and endless other promotional materials. Daily Wear for Medicine is the first ever of its kind to create curiosity in medicine through visual art. We at MedBricks are celebrating unsung heroes of the past who made enormous contributions to the field of medicine through our unique campaign called Daily Wear for Medicine. You can wear it, carry it, and give it.